Today we're talking about adding a story to our painting or focusing on a moment that creates a story. In this case, we're at the Boston Public Gardens. I'm doing or finishing up the sketch now, which is based on that initial photo, but you can see I've added some figures, and these figures are giving us a story. Perhaps this is the most literal type of story where we're actually using figures to create a scene or a narrative. But in painting, it can be a visual story. It can be about the light. It can be about the weather. It can be about just about anything that you can express visually. But in this case, we're using a narrative. And I can't think about narrative in painting without thinking of Norman Rockwell, who was one of the great storytellers through painting that I've known, and his paintings, when I see them today, they're still moving in that sense. So in these first washes, I'm adding lighter colors. You noticed I added a bit of cobalt blue to begin with, and then some light green to give me the highlights in the back, a wash of burnt sienna to the tree in foreground, and now I've quickly moved on to the stronger midtones, which are darker greens, adding some blue and even a little bit of neutral tint to my green, so that I get some richer, more shadowy greens. However, this is still primarily working in the background. I'm setting up the feeling of light in the background, light hitting some of the bright areas that surround the pond at Boston Public Gardens. A hint of the bridge and a break in the sky, some reflections on the water, all kind of achieved with this light medium tone of green. Now I've moved to the figures themselves, and the figures are going to start with this rich, warm tone, which is going to provide a foundation for them and help them to pull them to the foreground and make them stand out, which if you want to create a story and if you want to use figures of this scale, they should be either quite dark against a light background, as in this case, or quite bright against a dark background. And they should be very immediately readable. That's, I guess, the overriding idea here. So you can see them, and you can see that they've got some poses. The two children are bent over, trying to coax the ducks a little closer so they can watch them eat, and the mother is pointing something out. And now we're painting the big willow. The Boston Garden has these magnificent willows that are years old, and they've grown to a great height and width, and in the summertime they're full of these leaves. We're going to try and create a feeling of a breeze too, moving through the scene, expressed by the willow branches. But right now I'm painting the shadows that are falling over the willow that echo in the background here and there, that run up our figures a little bit, and certainly find a place in the foreground with dappled sunlight. I'm creating a larger tree that's to the left, a little bit closer, so it's a little darker, and about the same tonality as the foreground. This will help to kind of isolate or focus on these two children as the main subject. And this same dark, I'm using a big brush to carry it down into some branches in the willow, which will be moving through the scene at an angle to stimulate this feeling of a breeze coming through, and just moving those branches a little bit from left to right. You notice that the dress on the mother too is kind of moving to the right. So there's a few visual clues that there's a breeze moving through. Some people thought it's a Zen parable. How do you paint the wind? But you can't paint the wind. You can paint it through other objects, and that's what we're doing today. Adding some of those same darks, green with a little bit of black, and stronger blues in the upper parts of the willow branches to give us a feeling that there's shade, deep shade, and that a breeze is just moving these ever so slightly. It's a fun challenge to try and create a story. You don't want it to be, I guess, too, I don't know, too sweet or too. You want it to still be a good painting overall, a good visual image, and the figures to be a part of it. However, if you notice my figures, and I'm happy with this, they're animated. They seem to be caught in the middle of something, and yet they're blending into the scene as well. The shadow is helping me here to work with basically a silhouetted figure and run that shadow up the figure so that they kind of melt into the scene and yet have a strong presence in the scene. And it's a typical scene, and probably for most of us we've had this experience of taking some bread that's gone old and heading over to the pond to feed the ducks. It's just a really simple form of entertainment, but one that we all remember and one that we like to relive. So that's what's going on here. Two brothers and the mother by the water on a bright sunny day with a little bit of breeze, and they're feeding the ducks. But you notice the ducks have not yet appeared. Am I saving them? Are they going to come from the far shore? What's going on? The ducks have yet to appear. I'm still working on the figures, bringing some details to the figures to make them stand out, come forward, have some details. I put a cap on one, a striped shirt on another, and extended hands on both of them. Well, now the ducks are starting to come closer. You see they're kind of gathering near the shore, which is a good sign that tells us that there's a feeding going on. They're a little bit frenzied, excited, and so are the boys. Background, look how that recedes. In the first stage of the painting, it may have seemed a little too stark, but now it's really receding. What I'm doing to the left here is just giving a little more shadow to the water so that there's more of a focus towards the lower central part of the painting. Same on the right side. I'm just blending the reflections a little bit and gaining a center of interest. We can also do that by touching up on some of the lights that are pulling us to the left and right of the painting and keep it more centralized. A few highlights in areas where we have some strong darks, throwing a bit of light on her shoulder, on the top of her hat, on the shoulders of the boys, will help to bring out some feeling of overhead light. We certainly see that on the tree, and on the figures it will help us as well. We're just adding the finishing touches to our painting. We're not going to go any further than this. And here it is, finished painting. Hope you enjoyed it.